Hello friends, welcome to my channel Understanding Homeopathy. Today our topic is sick. Let us discuss what is sick according to Dr. Kent, discussed by him in Homeopathic Philosophy by Dr. Kent. As stated by Hahnemann in the Organon of Medicine, the physician's high and only mission is to restore the sick to health, to cure as it is termed. In this, Hahnemann has used a word called sick. In this coming video, we will be discussing about the in-depth meaning of sick according to Kent and Hahnemann. Every homeopath has to understand what is sickness and who the sick person is. To understand the sickness, let us quote something discussed by Kent in his homeopathic philosophy. True homeopath, when speaks of the sick, knows who it is that is sick. Sickness is expressed in the form of symptoms. Let us see how the symptoms expressed are considered as sickness. As we discussed, sickness is nothing but the symptoms or the sufferings expressed by the patient, but not the tissue changes that is seen in investigation reports. The text that is quoted here is taken from the Lectures on Homeopathic Philosophy by Dr. Kent. The tissue changes which are only the results of the disease, but the real sick man exists without the tissue changes that you see in investigations. Tissue changes are the results which come after the sickness. Sickness is prior to the tissue changes. The old school will not consider the person as sick unless and until they could see some tissue changes and they could find some findings through physiological examination, which is not being considered by our homeopaths to decide a person sick. A sick person is someone who is suffering. As stated by Hahnemann in the first aphorism, the physician's high and only mission is to restore the sick to health, to cure as it is termed. It means that it is the man that is sick to be restored to health, but not his body, not his tissues. We will find many of the people who say that I am sick, but not their body or tissues. So, being homeopaths, we do consider a man who is sick, but not a body which is sick, and we should treat that sick man to healthy state. This sick people narrates pages of symptoms because they look sick, but they tell you, I have been to many specialists, I have been physically examined from head to foot, but they tell me I am not sick and I have no disease. Then what does these symptoms or the sufferings of a patient mean? What they are representing? The symptoms mentioned or narrated by the patient are the real sickness that is to be considered when you are treating a patient. The same sick person has got plenty of symptoms, but what do you all the symptoms mean? These are the symptoms which really represents the sickness or suffering of a patient. That symptoms or sufferings to be removed, or we have to bring back the person from sickness to healthy state. It is true, if that state progresses, there will be evidences of disease, evidences which the pathologist may discover by his physical examination, which means that if the sickness is a state after progressing, you can witness the tissue changes in a person. Those tissue changes can be visualized or can be seen through physical examination or investigation reports. So the sickness is existing prior to the tissue changes. But at present, the patient is not sick, says the learned modern doctor. But what do you all the symptoms mean? Says the sick. I do not sleep at night. I have pains and aches. My bowels do not move. These difficulties in sleeping are pains and aches of a patient and difficulty in passing bowels are not witnessed in any physical examination, but those only can feel by the patient. Those feelings are being expressed through sufferings by the patient only. But when this sick person is visiting a doctor, they says that after complete physical examination from top to bottom, head to foot, they says that the patient is not sick because they couldn't find any physiological or tissue changes, so they are not considering that person is sick. Now we will get the justifiable answer for the invisible sufferings expressed by the patient. Why we have to consider those sufferings as the sickness? We say that man dies but he leaves his body behind. We dissect the body and find all of his organs, not the will and understanding. The senses belongs to physical man, but the sense is perceived and expressed through will and understanding, which you cannot see with eyes but through actions. Here it represents that the tissue changes which are related to the physiological body, but its sufferings are being expressed and perceived by our will and understanding. So we have to consider as a man only when the body is able to act or express its sufferings through will and understanding. That is the reason why we have to consider both physical body and will and understanding together conjointly forms a human being who is living. The combination of will and understanding along with the physical body constitutes man. Conjointly they make life and activity. They manufacture the body and cause all things of the life. Only the physical body cannot perform its activities, or it cannot survive on its own. But with the help of will and understanding only it can perform its all the activities and actions of life. Then only together with will, understanding and the physical body constitutes a man. With the will and understanding operating in order, we have a healthy man. The man is the will and understanding, and the house which he lives in is his body. The only physical body cannot being considered a man without will and understanding. The reason is why will and understanding only performs its activities of life. But the modern system of medicine will only look for the tissue changes that are completely related to the physiological body, from which you cannot treat a sick person or cannot remove the real sufferings of the man. When a man himself has been restored to health, there will be restoration and harmony in the tissues and in the activities. Then the sole duty of the physician is to put in order the interior of the economy, the will and understanding conjointly. Tissue changes are of the body and are the results of the diseases. They are not the actual disease. From this we have to understand that mere treating the tissue changes or looking for the physiological changes in the physical body, we have to consider the internal man, which represents the will and understanding, which are representing the activities of life through which we have to treat a sick person to his normal healthy state. When you treat a sick man, a sick person, automatically the physical body gets restored to its normal healthy state even with the tissue changes and the activity to its normal state. After understanding the real meaning of sickness, Hahnemann once said that there are no diseases but the sick people with the sufferings. After all this, Hahnemann understood that the so-called diseases were the grosser forms of disease results, that is, the appearances of the disease. There is prior disorder of internal government. This proceeds from within outward until we have pathological changes in the tissues. This is the main thing that we have to understand when you are considering a patient or treating a patient with sickness. The sickness comes from within. The will and understanding will express the sufferings through symptoms. Those sufferings are to be brought back to the normal healthy state. Then these physiological or tissue changes can be prevented and can be restored when you consider this internal environment or the government which is in disorder when brought back to its ordered state, then the sick person gets back to their normal healthy state. In the practice of medicine today, the idea of internal government is not found and the tissue changes only are taken into consideration when treating patients. But being homeopaths, we do give importance to the internal environment called the vital force, which is not being taught in the modern practice of medicine. But we have to consider that vital force as the responsible factor for the order or disorder in the economy of a man in bringing healthy life or diseased sickness state. For a homeopath, after knowing the real meaning of sickness, the sole duty of the homeopathic physician is to heal the sick. It is not his sole duty to heal the results of the sickness, which are the diseases, but the sickness itself to be treated, to be restored to healthy state.